Hello, everyone, and welcome in. This is Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and welcome to Rat Pack Fantasy Football. Today, we are here with a little bit of a Week 3 preview. We will be starting with the NFC Home Games, which includes Sunday Night Football, and we mix in, it includes Thursday Night Football and one of the two Monday Night Football games. Here to help me with that is Jeremy. Jeremy, how's it going, man?
Good, man. It's we're through 2 weeks. We kind of know what's going on here, which is great. And I know what's going on here on the show because I got smart enough to, when you hit that intro button, turn down my headphones so I didn't get blasted in the ear and sustain even more nerve damage than usual. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, it's interesting. We're starting to see which teams are legit and which teams aren't. Some of these spreads I look at and I think I don't agree with that. That team seems better. I did look through for my survival article. I did look through all the games. There's a lot of one-sided games this week. Like I normally for my survival article, I highlight like the 3 or 4 biggest spreads and there's normally one double digit spread, and then the next 2 or 3 are like 7, 8 point games. There are like 6 games that are 10 point and over spread. Like today alone, we have the Niners who are heavy favorites and the Cowboys who are heavy favorites. The Bills are medium, and then I think the AFC probably has 4 itself. So maybe the closer games are going to be the NFC ones, I think, this week. But the AFC's could be a very one sided week of football. So.
yeah, man, but you know what? That means that there's going to be fantasy goodness on both sides of the ball. Most likely, we're going to have a team dominate, come out early, swinging, and then some team trying to catch up in garbage time. So it should be fun.
Yeah, inevitably, this will be the first time this season where we've seen someone starting off well and then get benched in the second half because their team was up 40 points. One of those games where it's like, oh, well, we didn't really need Jalen Hurts this week because the Eagles, actually, I don't think it'll be the Eagles. They have a decent game, but, could be a Chiefs team where Mahomes gets benched at halftime because they're up 30 on the Bears. So
Very true.
We will start with our first one here. It's the Giants going to San Francisco. The Niners are favored by 10. I don't think we have any significant injuries to deal with in this one or any major headlines. Anything of note to you that you could think of?
Well, we got Saquon, right?
Didn't even completely forgot you're right. Good call.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Yeah.
I just literally wrote that up. I don't know how I forgot that. Good call.
Well, and here's the thing, right, is that the Giants didn't have any chance anyway. And with Saquon sure to miss this game, there's no way that they're going to be able to keep up and compete with the 49ers. Look, it's the NFL, any given Sunday and all that. But, Daniel Jones and whatever the Giants are rolling out there in terms of pass catchers, just especially with no threat in the running game, it's going to be really difficult for them. And the 49ers are just going to pin their ears back. And Daniel Jones is going to run for a lot of yards, but he's also going to go down behind the line a lot of times in this one.
Yeah, and I should note these graphics, they're not organized by position like last week. I switched them around, and this is their fantasy output from last week. So you'll note Daniel Jones was the highest on the Giants side of the ball and McCaffrey on the 49ers. So that's how that settles out. Let's just take a look here. I guess Daniel Jones, Brock Purdy. I think we're still starting Daniel Jones this week over Purdy pretty easily. You agree? Disagree?
I don't know. I think it's pretty even, right? Daniel Jones has the potential to be the quarterback one any given week, especially with what he adds with his legs. But the San Francisco defense is so good. I think, especially without Barkley, they'll find a way to corral Jones. And then, Brock Purdy is throwing against one of the worst defenses in the league through the first 2 weeks of the season. So I think it's probably about even. I wouldn't hesitate to start Purdy, and I'm probably starting Jones. I have to start Jones in a lot of places out of necessity, but I'd probably start him if I over a lot of other options, I guess, this week.
Yeah, I think I'd probably start them both. I'm looking at my matchup guide for this week. It's still only 2 weeks, but it looks like the Niners are obviously on one of the lower end of the matchup spectrum. It's not great. I typically sit everyone against San Francisco. The Giants aren't a great matchup either, it looks like. So, I don't know. I think, like you said, though, I'm probably starting Jones as a high-end QB2 and Purdy as more of a mid to high-end QB2, but I think I feel comfortable starting both of them if I have to. You're comfy starting both? Yep.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the running back situation here. Christian McCaffrey, no worries there. He's the must start. I added this also to my stash guide. This is a good one where, since it's a primetime game, isolation game. It's the only one going at that time. Yep. This is a great one to stash Elijah Mitchell if you have any room on your bench. I went through this all week with my article because it looked like Jerome Ford was the lottery ticket. I guess that might not be true as of now, but Elijah Mitchell, if Christian McCaffrey ever goes down like Saquon did, he is a winning lottery ticket. On the other side of the ball, like I said, it looks like Barkley, well, like you said, it looks like Barkley's going to be out at least a couple of weeks. There was not necessarily a winning lottery ticket on this side. They've got Eric Gray, Matt Breida, Gary Brightwell. You adding any of the three Giants this week, or three Giants running backs?
No, I mean, they're playing the 49ers, right? So you just never know what's going to happen. I think it was the perfect storm for Kyren Williams and Matthew Stafford just having one of those godly games that he's capable of. And just reading the defense perfectly, knowing when to check down. And Kyren had a lot of great production through the air. I don't really see that, especially with Barkley out. I don't see that for any of the backs. It's likely a rotation. They seem to trust Breida, which is unfortunate for fantasy because he's not going to produce, even flex-worthy stats unless he finds the end zone. And then we just don't know between Gray and Brightwell who is really going to get more of that workload. And especially against the 49ers, is just an avoid for me all around.
Wide receiver confidence, or I think we're just confidently starting both Ayuk and Debo. I know one of them, they flip-flop back and forth whose week it is. Ayuk, I know, is not practicing right now. Something's going on there, so you might want to keep an eye on him. If you're desperate, are you starting any of the Giants receivers? Like Hyatt had a couple of deep targets. I always feel safest with Slayton putting up 8 to 10 points. Campbell's a dart throw. Shepard, I'm not in on at all. Wandell looks hurt. Anyone?
Not really. I mean, the only one would be Waller, right? Because it's a tight end, because Daniel Jones, as the offense seems to dictate, Giants went out and got Darren Waller in the offseason. They're feeding him as much as they can. And, I'll throw a dart there at tight end at a terrible position if I don't have a better option. But one thing we know is the Giants will be behind, and they don't have Saquon Barkley to rely on. So they definitely need to throw the ball somewhere. I do like Hyatt. Hyatt's really interesting. The problem is the 49ers secondary with Lenore stepping up and, of course, Afunga. Those guys have been really amazing for the 49ers on the back end. And we know the front of that defense is going to bring the pressure. So maybe Hyatt with the dart throw, maybe Waller if I don't have a better option at tight end. But like you said, probably staying away if I can.
All right, to breeze through the end here. Tight ends, I think they're both similar. Kittle, Waller, start them if you drafted them. Neither has been great to start the season. Waller's been a little better. Both probably mid to high end tight end ones. They could, at any week, they could be the tight end one, or they could bust like they've kind of been doing. The kickers, let's see, both are, middle of the pack matchups. So I don't know, start either if you've got them. I don't really feel strongly one way or another. Jake Moody's not a bad play, a little bit tougher matchup. I'm fine either way. The DSTs, I am not touching the Giants. They gave up. They were a terrible start last week against the Cardinals on the stream, and I don't want anything to do with them. The 49ers are my DST1 on the week, so they are an absolute must start here. Any disagreements with the conclusion of that?
Nope. You had that pretty much pegged, I think. The one thing I just want to circle back to real quick is Elijah Mitchell. I saw Adam Levitan posted something, and I'm sure this came from other sources as well. But Kyle Shanahan, in one of his press conferences this week, was lamenting the fact that Christian McCaffrey had like something ridiculous, like 97% of snaps last week. So he was saying it wasn't the plan to keep Mitchell on the bench. He wants to get him more involved, and especially in a game they should be up big. I think Mitchell, if you have a desperation flex, it's not a bad dart to throw.
Yeah, like I said, he's at very least I want to stash him because he's a league winner at any point if McCaffrey goes down. But we'll move on here to what could be a bonanza. We got to pick them between the Chargers and the Vikings. I think I'm going to start every possible player in this game that I can. Yeah. Neither team plays defense. Both teams can score. This one, I don't know what the over-under is. I forgot to check, but the over-under on this one's got to be 80. We start at the quarterback here. Kirk Cousins is the worst of the two options, which is scary considering he's currently the QB2. The over-under is only 54 and a half. I'm smashing. Like, I think one of these teams might hit 54 and a half themselves. So but Cousins, the current QB2 on the season, I'm starting him as a top 5 or 6 quarterback this week. In this matchup, Justin Herbert, not nearly as good this season. As Cousins has been, still starting him as a top 6 option, top 5 option. I think either one of these two could finish as the QB1 on the week. Just starting both of them without thought.
Easily. Yeah. Plug and plays, no issues there. And we're in Minnesota, so they don't have the dome in there anymore, but they have a retractable dome over there. Are they still controlling the weather conditions?
Yeah, I think so.
Treating this as run-of-the-mill, standard, run-up-the-score type game. Yeah, everyone's in play, like you said.
Yeah. Running backs, I don't know what to do here. Austin Eckler, I don't know if he plays. If Eckler plays, you obviously start him. Alexander Madison's been terrible. If you drafted him, you kind of have to start him and just hope he falls into the end zone, but I don't want any part of Madison. I'm glad I didn't draft him. I've actually stashed a few shares of Ty Chandler in case he loses his job. Like I said, Eckler, if he starts, you fire him up. If he doesn't, you probably start Josh Kelly. I don't know about you. I prefer Kelly over Madison at this point.
Yeah, in this matchup, I don't necessarily disagree. The Chargers have the potential to be decent against the run. It doesn't usually work out that way.
No, it doesn't.
And Alexander Madison has looked bad. But this is the reason you draft Alexander Madison. He should put up flex-worthy numbers in this game. You'd hope for him to be RB2. It's possible, but he is going to have to find the end zone. We know at least the Vikings will move the ball in this one. So, I'm firing up Madison where I have him.
Good matchups for the wide receivers, and there's plenty of firepower. We've got Keenan Allen and Justin Jefferson, who are both going to be probably wide receiver 1s this week. Mike Williams and Jordan Addison, probably going to be at least wide receiver 2s. And then we've got Quentin Johnston and KJ Osborne, who could probably be solid wide receiver 3s. So I know for sure I'm starting at least the top 4 in this. If I'm desperate for a 3 or a flex, I'm probably throwing Osborne in or Quentin Johnston and just hoping they find the end zone or a long play. But I don't expect any defense to be played in this one. So I'm comfortable starting all 6 of them if I have to.
I would go Joshua Kelly Joshua Palmer over Quentin Johnston.
That's fair.
But, Johnston, this is the perfect game for the Chargers to get him involved. The problem for me is we just haven't seen it yet from him. And by all reports, he's buried in behind Palmer. I don't know. I don't really care for Palmer, but I'd probably rank them Palmer, Osborne, Johnston.
Yeah, I don't care for any of them particularly, but the matchup, I'm starting the matchup. God only knows who's going to score in this. Tight end, TJ Hawkinson's an easy start. Gerald Everett, I used to think was an easy start, but he's a dicey one because Donald Parham's been stealing, the end zone targets. I think I would avoid this one if I could, but I mean, I'm sure there's a league out of my 8 million where I'm going to start Everett or Parham. I don't hate it. There's worse options in here. You just hope they find their way into the end zone for one to save the day. But we've got probably Hawkinson, a high end tight end 1 here. And then the other 2 are probably streamable if you have to.
Yeah, with healthy wide receivers in Los Angeles, unfortunately, Gerald Everett and the rest are just prey that they fall into the end zone, like you said this week. So if I have to start Everett, I will, but not excited about it.
Greg Joseph, Dicker the kicker, both solid options, good matchup, good weather,
Yep.
whether or not the roof is closed. Both DSTs. Let's just sit both DSTs. I don't want any
Yes.
part of this. They could both give up 40 this week, so it's not going to be a good one. So let's just pass on that. Any disagreement with tight end, kicker, or D there?
No, none at all. And in most cases, I don't need to worry about it in my leagues. We jettisoned those long ago. So, but yeah.
It's the family and friends leagues that I find. Family, friends, work leagues. Those one, the non-industry leagues, those are the ones that still have kickers and DSTs, I find.
Yeah.
But that's why I put it in there, because the industry leagues, people in the industry aren't watching my show for help. They know what they're doing. The people who are watching these podcasts are the people in the family and friends leagues, and they're playing kickers and DSTs. So you don't have a whole lot of experts watching each other's podcasts. So
instead of researching which kickers and DSTs to start each week, just close your eyes, randomly hit hit add, and just plug in whoever into your lineup, and then also spend that time you would have spent researching, petitioning your league to get rid of kickers and defenses. The randomness is just too much for me. I prefer a slight, at least the ability to trick myself, that there's a slight amount of skill involved and not just complete luck.
I find that's true of DST. It's a real mess. Like, look, the Giants should have been a great one last week. They were poisoned. But kicker, I find I'm pretty good at projecting kicker. You aim for high-scoring games, good weather, stuff like that. There are some things you can get. But we'll move on. We've got the Bills, 6.5-point favorites at the Commanders. I don't know if people think the Bills have looked that bad to start the season. I don't know why this is only 6.5. This, to me, has double-digit spread written all over it. Josh Allen, we are firing him up as a top 3.
Yeah.
Obviously, this matchup it's average, so, it doesn't really impact it. The other side of the ball, Sam Howell has looked probably better for fantasy than he has in real life. He makes some real pretty throws. It's not a great matchup. Actually, now looking at them, they're both closer to bad matchups than good, but I don't think either of them is bad enough to sway it. Allen's matchup is worse, but you're starting him regardless. Sam Howell, if I'm in a super flex, I don't really have a problem starting Sam Howell this week. I think he's probably a reliable mid-range QB2. What do you think about these guys?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Buffalo defense, they haven't been world beaters really since the middle of last season. So they look to be kind of who we thought they were. They have the ability to give up points, but certainly they're going to score a ton of points on the offensive side of the ball. So if you got to start Howell, yeah, I'm okay with it. He's looked good. And we know Eric Bieniemy has the ability to kind of scheme up plays and, help his guys perform and hit those fantasy points we want to see. On Washington's side, that defense looks like it's only week 2, but it looks like they're starting to come into their own. Some of their young players, Chase Young, looks like he might have turned a corner. Sweat and Payne, that entire defensive line may be finally reaching their potential. And then they have a couple of nice linebackers. They have their young safeties like Curl, Fuller at corner, right? So this should be, on paper, a really good defense, and it's possible they actually are. So if you're asking why the line is a little bit closer than it should be, it's possible Washington at home can limit Buffalo's offense, but they can only do so much. Buffalo's going to still score.
The running backs here aren't great options or terrible ones. They're not in great matchups or terrible ones. It's just kind of meh all over. James Cook is probably the best here. I don't know. Probably Cook, then Brian Robinson, Gibson, and then whoever the hell else you want on the Bills. I don't know. I think we've got probably just flex appeal here. I don't know if I trust Cook. I don't know if I trust Robinson, either of them as an RB2. If I got to flex them, I'm fine with that as a flex. Gibson, I think I'd prefer to sit along with whoever the hell else we're calling the backup here, Damian Harris. So I think I can flex both James Cook and Brian Robinson, but I don't think I see either of them much higher. Both run defenses are probably better than they're ranked right now. I think I prefer to avoid these guys, but like I said, I'll flex them if I have to.
Yeah, I agree. Because I tend to go wide receiver heavy, I have a lot of Cook and a bit of Robinson.
Yeah, the
as
zero RB builds, I've got a lot of that too.
More or less, yeah. But I have a lot of those guys in my RB2 slot. But yeah, I'm not expecting much more than flex worthy stat totals than this one. So yeah, you play them if you have to. And in most cases, you're hoping for 10 to 12 points.
Has Buffalo's secondary been banged up so far? Because they're looking so far, they've been a great matchup for wide receivers, which is surprising. Whereas the Commanders have not been a great one. Like, we're starting Diggs, obviously. I don't care if the matchup is bad or not. I think I'm probably comfortable starting both McLaurin and Dotson as wide receiver twos. I don't like if I got Gabe Davis, I don't mind flexing him. It's a boom or bust. I don't think this is one of the weeks where he's gonna break loose behind the secondary for that long touchdown. So it means he's probably a bust this week. Curtis Samuel, I see the same way. Like, he's a desperation flex, but so I'm comfortable. I like, obviously Stephon Diggs is an easy start. McLaurin and Dotson probably has twos. I don't think I want any part of any of the other receivers. Hey, actually, it's funny. The guy I was stashing has been decent lately, De'Ami Brown. I know it was Sam Howell's college roommate, so I stashed him just based on that. And he seems to be frustrating because he's getting more targets than you would expect. But that's been the problem so far for the wide receivers on Washington. They really seem to be spreading the ball around. Dotson, Brown, Samuel, multiple tight ends being factored in here. Like, the wide receivers in this game, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I totally agree. Brown is more involved than really he should be, and that's interesting. I didn't make that connection between him and Howell, but he's not really taking away the production from Terry McLaurin. McLaurin is going to find a way, and he's usually going to find a way in and around the end zone. He's taking it away, at least in the first 2 weeks, from Jahan Dotson. So, like you said, spreading it around, it's really hard to trust Dotson, especially in a matchup like this against the Bills. Of course, he could go off, but I'm more comfortable at this point starting McLaurin over Dotson. And yeah, Brown, you can't start. Curtis Samuel is going to have his big games. He had a pretty nice game in week 1. Week 2 came back down to earth and showed us who he is. He's boom bust. So I'm staying away from everyone except probably McLaurin. And if you have Dotson and you spent high capital on him, you can throw him in there and pray. But I'm looking elsewhere. For Buffalo, I don't love the matchup, but like you said, you're starting Diggs. I'll throw Gabe Davis out there, but again, he's like a Curtis Samuel plus type where he'll have probably more boom potential, but he's going to bust just as much. And then, Shakir scored a touchdown last week, but I think it was just one target. It was at least one catch. And then, there's nobody else here. So it's pretty much Diggs for me, McLaurin, Gabe, Dotson, and no one else.
Yeah, that sounds about right. The tight ends, neither are a great option. Well, I guess all three of them aren't great options. Mm-hmm. Tough matchups here. The Bills only give up 4 points to tight ends. The Commanders about 2.5. I don't really know. Like, if you've got Kincaid, I'm sure I'm going to have to start him somewhere. He's not a great option. Logan Thomas is, I don't even know if he's going to be able to play after that headshot. Cole Turner, it seems like a lot of these guys are just mixing in enough, especially on the Washington side, to make it frustrating for, some of the higher end talent, but I don't think any of them has standalone value on their own. Are you high on any of the three here? Well, I guess it's 4. We got Turner, Logan Thomas, Dawson Knox, and Dalton Kincaid. You really comfortable starting any of them?
No, I mean, like the show sheet says there, the graphic says Dawson no. If you don't know, Dawson no is way more involved.
Yeah, it does say that. Hey,
Dawson no is way more involved than really any of us assumed he would be. He hasn't been much involved in the past. I don't know if that was the Cole Beasley / insert whoever was in that position for Buffalo over the past few years in the slot. And now, Khalil Shakir isn't it. But between Knox, Diggs, and then Gabe Davis doing a little bit more, there isn't as much as we thought there would be for Dalton Kincaid there. So he's risky, especially against a Commanders defense that is better than we want them to be. And then on the other side of the ball, Logan Thomas I don't see him looking now. Doesn't seem like he's in the concussion protocol, but he did leave last week's game with a concussion. Cole Turner came in and was fine. That's why he has any fantasy points at all. So I'm staying away from the Commanders tight ends this week, unless Logan Thomas is a full go, and you probably have better options anyway. Kincaid, you might throw him in there, and I think at this point, no one is playing Knox. If you are, just don't. I think these games where he's scoring more than Kincaid are anomalies. As you can see, they were really close last week anyway.
Tyler Bass, Joey Slye, both mid-range matchups. If you have either of them, you can be comfortable starting them. Mm-hmm. The Bills DST, I don't mind starting because the Commanders tend to struggle. I think they're probably a top 6 for me. I don't have my exact rankings done yet. Washington, I like the defense. I don't like the opponent. I am going to sit them this week. I have no desire to face the Bills. The Bills are one of maybe 4 or 5 teams that I don't want my DST facing, along with Eagles, Niners, Cowboys, and Chiefs. So those are the top 5 that I'm sitting or avoiding, and I'm sitting them this week. Any issues with that?
No. The one thing I would say is I think you can play the Commanders DST in a pinch, and the only reason being is because they will pressure the quarterback. Josh Allen we know he's going to run around. It's possible he takes some sacks, makes an errant throw. It's not probably going to matter for the bottom line in terms of the game, but for fantasy, you might get away with kind of a top 10 finish out of the Commanders D if they can manage to turn the ball over a little bit and get to Allen a few times.
Yeah, Josh Allen turning the ball over like crazy. Next up, we have Saints at Packers. Packers getting 2. I'm not sure why. I think both these teams are very similar. They're probably better defenses than they are offenses. I think this one's going to be a low-scoring, boring, drawn-out game. I guess if you need to start Love or Carr, I don't mind doing so as a QB2. I think I'd rather start Love. The matchup's better for him. Probably the ceiling's higher for him. They're both in the same range. I don't love the matchups for either. I think the Packers and the Saints are both solid defenses. Yeah. I would avoid them if I could. I'm definitely not playing either in single QB. If you got to start them in Superflex, you do what you got to do. But I don't love the ceiling for either. I think they're just mid-range QB2s. You?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Carr's a little bit disappointing in that regard. I mean, I think he should be better, but we'll see what that looks like next week when he gets Alvin Kamara back. Michael Thomas has been more involved, thankfully, than we expected. Guys like Juwan Johnson have been a little bit less involved, but overall, I think there's a good amount of weapons there for Carr. He can blow up any week, but I wouldn't necessarily expect it this week, especially with that Packers back end in their secondary there. In terms of Jordan Love, the one thing I want to double check on him right now is I've heard talk, between Atlanta last week and in week 1, the Chicago Bears. I don't know if we've seen the real Jordan Love yet. I think the Saints are a much better defense. They're certainly going to shut down Luke Musgrave. That core of linebackers and safeties is just going to smother Musgrave. The Saints have always done it, and then they've done it so far this season. But in terms of those young wide receivers, they could get loose, and Jordan Love has been finding them. So I don't think we really know who Jordan Love is yet. If he puts up another big game, I think it's going to speak volumes for both his value and how he might progress in his career at this early stage.
Yeah, this is a make it or break it week. This is a real test for him, but I'm not all that hopeful. The running backs, I don't think I'm starting any of them despite a good matchup. Aaron Jones hasn't been healthy. Who knows if he plays? Dylan looks terrible. Kamara's out this week. Jamal Williams has looked terrible and injured. having the backfield to himself. And even if Kendre Miller plays, he's been injured and he's a rookie. I think I'm just sitting the entire backfield on both these teams. I'm sure somewhere if he plays, I'll be forced to start Aaron Jones, but I don't love it. I don't want anything to do with most of this game, and especially the running backs.
Agree. The one thing I would say is that Tony Jones is a popular waiver ad.
No.
Your waivers have already gone through, so it's possible you may have bid too much money to acquire Tony Jones, and he's playing the Packers. I think what's more likely than not, and we saw it play out in the second half last week after Jamal Williams went down, Taysom Hill is going to take a lot of his Taysom Hill snaps and do Taysom Hill things and just not score you enough fantasy points on his own and just steal away all the touches and potential and opportunity from everybody else. So Tony Jones fell into the end zone twice last week for the Saints against the Packers. I doubt it. Unlikely. So like you said, just sit them all and, wait for next week until Kamara and hopefully Aaron Jones come back.
The wide receivers, it's a bad matchup for the Packers. It's an average one for the Saints. Excuse me. I'm starting Chris Olave, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Michael Thomas, don't mind him if I have to as a 2 or a 3. Rashid Shaheed probably as a 3 or a flex. Mm-hmm. On the Packers side of the ball, I don't know what I want here. Do I want Christian Watson back in his first game? Don't know if he'll be on a pitch count. I'd probably like to avoid him if I could. Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed. I think I'm avoiding Doubs unless I have to. Jaden Reed, who knows if he'll put I think with Reed, Doubs, and Watson, if I have to flex any of them, I will. But the only ones I really want are the Saints in this matchup. I don't have a great feel for the Packers. I think the Packers are just spreading the ball around, and It's just going to be a different guy every week. And I don't particularly want to play the hot hand game, so that's how I feel about it.
Yep. Nothing really to add. Just to say that Dontavian Wicks on Green Bay is a lot more involved than we want him to be, and that's just going to limit the upside of all of these other Packers. Who knows? It could be a Samori Toure game next week, against the Saints. We just have no clue. But like you said, Olave, Thomas, Shaheed, really interesting. And I'd fire up any of those guys because we know that Carr can support certainly one high end, but also a secondary option. And that seems to be, at least for now, being split between both Thomas and Shaheed.
Musgrave, like him. Juwan Johnson, don't mind him. Hate both matchups for tight ends. Don't want my tight ends facing either of these defenses. If you can get away from them, which I hope you can, they shouldn't be your tight end ones. I would play your other option.
Yep.
Blake Group for the Saints. He's a decent option at kicker. That's a top 3 matchup. It's a top 10-1 for the Packers, so I don't mind that. If you got to start either kicker, go for it. Or if you got to stream a kicker, they're both decent options off the waiver wire. Defenses, I don't know, because both defenses I think are very good defenses. I don't think either offense is particularly great, and I think they're both going to be exposed as frauds this week in a low-scoring game. But if I'm wrong, you could see a potential high-scoring game where maybe both teams just suck at defense and score a lot of points on each other. So I would prefer to avoid both defenses or DSTs. But if you got to play them, I don't hate playing either of them. They're just not who I want. I don't know. This could go either way. I think it's going to be low scoring. I don't know if it's going to be a turnover fest. So I don't see a great opportunity for high defensive outputs. But like I said, it should be low scoring. What are your thoughts? That's kind of the more confusing situation out of this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, I can go either way. You can start them. You can sit them. I'm just looking at, sometimes the sneaky play is to see who these DSTs are playing the following week to see if maybe you can get away with them in 1 week. And then they have a smash whack matchup in the next week. But in week 4, Green Bay plays Detroit, so I don't want any part of them. And then New Orleans plays Tampa, who's been pretty good. So I'm probably just staying away from these DSTs. You'll find better options elsewhere.
Moving on, we have the Falcons at Lions. Lions getting 3.5, which is another line I didn't really understand. After beating the Chiefs, I get it. They shit the bed against the Seahawks, but I think the Seahawks are significantly better than the Falcons. I don't think this should be 3.5. The Lions should be getting at least 6, but we'll see. Jared Goff is a top 6 streaming or matchup here, so I like him as probably a low-end 1, high 2. He's been really consistent so far to start the season. Desmond Ridder, it's a below-average matchup. He's a below-average quarterback. I'm still not convinced that the Lions defense is all it's cracked up to be. They seem to still give up points. So if you've got to start Ridder, it's not the worst thing you could do. In a single QB, I want nothing to do with him. Jared Goff in single QB, I could see starting him depending, if you had Richardson and you lost him. But I guess I could start them both in Superflex. Obviously, Goff is my preference here. What do you think about these two?
Yeah, I think with Goff, you're going to see Detroit pass the ball more than they like to, and that's mostly because David Montgomery is going to miss this game. We have Craig Reynolds, who's fine, right? They trust him, and he's been around for a couple of years. They have, Bam Knight, who they signed from the Jets a few weeks ago, and they brought another guy in, which I just saw, name fails me. It doesn't matter. But, yeah, they're going to give the ball less to that David Montgomery role. They're going to lean on the Jahmyr Gibbs role, but that's more of a passing role than anything. So I think Goff is just going to see more, attempts and opportunity than usual than they'd like to give him. So, and he's going to do just fine. So, yeah, top 12 option, at worst, I think he's a high-end quarterback too. So, yeah, I'll start him. Ridder, Ritter's and Marcus Mariota was incredibly serviceable last year for fantasy, right? He was terrible, and he was benched and left the team in reality, right? But for fantasy, when they fired him up, Arthur Smith was able to figure out a way to get him running around, probably because the play calls are so bad that he couldn't do anything else but run around. But he got you about 20 points a game. Desmond Ridder had a terrible week 1, but that was against a good Carolina Panthers defense. Last week against that Green Bay defense that we were just talking about, he put up, and I'm trying to see if this in 4-point passing, he put up over 22 fantasy points. So that's kind of what you're hoping for. You have 25 there. That's kind of what you're hoping for from Ridder. I think it's possible. Like you said, the Lions D is meh. They'll rush him, but Ridder can run around and make things happen.
The Lions are a bad matchup for a running back. The Falcons are middle of the pack. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is a must start. This should be his game here where he finally breaks out. Bijan is always a must start. Yep. I know Craig Reynolds has been the hot pickup here on waiver wires this week. I'm not starting him. Tyler Algier, I think you can desperation flex if you have to. I don't really want to start him. I think I said this last week. It was time to sell high because sooner or later this was going to swing in favor of Bijan, and it seems to have swung quite quickly to the way we all knew. Like, we all knew it was going to go this way. Why was it a surprise? So Bijan, Gibbs, both top 6 to 10 options for sure. I think they're both must starts.
Yep.
Other than that, I'm avoiding everything in this backfield.
Yeah, yep. and we know that Detroit has a decent pass rush. So Desmond and can put up points. So Desmond Ridder is likely to drop back and continue to build on the 39 rushing yards and a score on the ground that he had last week. So Tyler Algier, that's why he's looking at 4.8 points in week 2. It's very likely he puts up a line similar again. So, I don't really want to start him. I think Craig Reynolds can get you 4.8 points if you really need it. But like you said, Bijan, then Gibbs, and then, probably nobody else.
At wide receiver, it's a good matchup for the Lions. Doesn't matter. I'm starting St. Brown regardless. I know he's dealing with an injury and not practicing today, so keep an eye on that. Yeah, starting him regardless. It's a high-end 1. Josh Reynolds, I still feel comfortable flexing. For the time being, he seems to be decent. It's not a great matchup for the Falcons, but the Falcons' passing game isn't great for the Falcons. So I think at this point, if you have to flex London, you can. I don't want to rely on him to replicate last week's performance. I think he's going to have 18-point weeks and then back to 2-point weeks. So St. Brown, high end 1, Reynolds as a flex, London, if I got to flex him or as a 3, I will. I want nothing else to do with the rest of the receivers in this game. So I don't. That's how I see it. How about you?
Yeah, nothing else to say here other than Drake London had a pretty nice game last week. He had 7 targets, 6 catches, 67 yards, and a touchdown. Um, he could easily find the end zone again. We don't want to bank on that for fantasy, but I'm less concerned about Drake London than I think others are. However, because of the offense, because of Desmond Ritter, because of what a Bijan Robinson can do, he's probably going to be a lot less consistent than we want him to be. But yeah, Drake London, if you got to fire him up as a wide receiver 2, 3, not necessarily expecting that wide receiver 2 production. But yeah, I think he's okay this week.
Tight ends, both top 10 matchups. Sam Laporta gets a top 3 matchup. I think he, for a rookie, is a pretty easy start, unless you've got a high-end guy that you paired him with. Pitts, I'm starting. I get it. It's not happening, but you got to. I'm not starting Jonnu Smith, so I think I'm just starting both of them. At kicker, Riley Patterson gets an average matchup. Start him if you have to. It's in Detroit, so it's a dome. That helps. Koo, it's a bad matchup for him, but I don't care. It's a dome. It should be a decent game. I think I would start both, indoor games. I hate sitting kickers in indoor games, especially if it should be a close game. I will fire them both up. DSTs kind of worry me. I don't really like the Falcons here. I think they could give up a lot of points. The Lions, I don't really want to start either because the Lions could shut them down or give up a lot of points. Ritter doesn't really turn the ball over that much. Like he doesn't throw that much, so it's hard to throw interceptions. I don't think either of these DSTs really has a high ceiling for a big output here. I don't really want to play either of them. If I had to, I'd rather go with the Lions. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. Lions over Falcons, and no one is my preference. The one thing I want to mention that you touched on, Sam Laporta for me, it's only been 2 weeks, but he is a must start while Jameson Williams is out. He is probably a must start once Jameson Williams comes back. He is just seeing plenty of work, and really all we're looking for at the tight end position is volume. He's also good, and they drafted him for a reason. Clearly, they are showing off his potential early. Laporta is not coming out of my starting lineup. And if I have like you said, if I have another good tight end, like a Kelsey or Darren Waller or something, and I took Laporta late, in some cases, especially in tight end premium leagues, flexing Laporta is certainly an option.
Moving on to the next one, we have the Panthers at the Seahawks. Seahawks are getting 5.5. Sorry, start at quarterback here. We got Geno, who hasn't looked great. He's getting a top 12 matchup. I think I feel comfortable starting him as a high-end 2, low-end 1 if desperate. You could probably start him in a single QB if you're up against it. Not a great option, but he's there. Bryce Young, I don't want anything to do with in single QB. In Superflex, I'd like to avoid him. Not only is this the second worst matchup for a quarterback, but he missed practice today and is dealing with something. He looks pretty lost out there. Out of the 3 rookie QBs at the top of the draft there, he easily looks the worst right now. If you're in a Superflex and you have no option, you got to start him. But Superflex, it's so tough to say. If you're a quarterback and you have a pulse, start him. If you don't really have an option. If you have what are you going to do? You're going to drop Bryce Young to pick up Jake Browning if
no.
Burrow doesn't play? But I feel a lot more comfortable with Geno as a high-end 2. Mm-hmm. Young is a super flex situational desperation play. So.
Yep, totally agree. The one thing with the Seahawks is they're still trying to figure out, who they should target, what the pecking order is for wide receivers. Lockett got most of the work last week, as you can tell based on those totals that he put up. I think it was DK in week 1. JSN continues to be a lot more involved than certainly I expected early, just given the talent of Metcalf and Lockett. There's no denying JSN's talent, and that's showing on the field just in terms of the amount of opportunities that he's getting. So, you can kind of just flip a coin, flip 3 coins, figure out who you want to start. But Lockett, Metcalf, and even JSN are potential starts for me. certainly Lockett and Metcalf will be in my lineups.
Also, DK missed a portion of last week's game, so I think that helped JSN. But I think moving on here, the running backs are the ones to target this week. It's the second best matchup for Miles Sanders, so maybe he finally breaks out of his funk and actually looks usable. Seventh best for Kenneth Walker. I'm getting ready to take my victory lap here as Kenneth Walker is the guy and Zach Charbonnet is useless.
Yep.
Starting both of them, not really interested. I know Hubbard had some receptions and was all right. Charbonnet was okay. Got stopped on a couple of goal lines carries. If I have to, I think I could desperation flex either of Hubbard or Charbonnet. I don't really want either of them in my lineup. They're more stashing them for future reference. I think if I had to choose, I feel more comfortable going Walker. Yeah, Walker over Sanders. It's so tough because I think Walker has a higher ceiling, but Sanders, I think, is going to be buoyed by some receptions here. So maybe I go Sanders over Walker. But to me, they're both potentially high-end RB2s, if not mid-range RB2s. But I feel comfortable starting either of them if I have to this week.
Yeah, I do too. And the only thing that kind of concerns me about Sanders is, like you mentioned, Hubbard was out there. I don't know how many receptions he had, but it was quite a few. And he looked pretty good. He had some burst, right? Sanders was still fine and looked fine, but it wasn't the output that you wanted out of him. But they were playing – were they up against the Saints in week 2?
Who was that? The Panthers?
Panthers. Yeah. So that's kind of why those numbers are depressed. So I don't really have any issue starting either of those guys. I'd rank them Walker, Sanders, pretty close, but Walker ahead. Hubbard, a tier or 2 below, but a clear 3, and then Charbonnet just way down. He's a stash for me at this point.
Wide receivers, it's a good matchup for the Seahawks. I think DK's an easy start I think DK and Lockett are both an easy start as a 2. Yep. JSN, I think I'm comfortable starting him as my 3 or my flex, which I wasn't prior to a week ago. I don't know if I'm going to get burned, but find out that was just, although I don't know how much of the production was when DK was out, but if I got to flex him, I don't mind it. For the Panthers, it's a bad matchup, the third worst, because the Seahawks are a run funnel. So I know Thielen's been getting some run here. It seems like it was all on like one series in the early second quarter. I don't really want to start Thielen. I dropped Thielen a lot the last 2 weeks for waiver wire players. If you have to, I guess you could desperation play Thielen. I'm disappointed by Mingo. Chark's never healthy. Thielen's the only option, and he's, I don't know, a desperation play at best. I think I'll play all 3 of the big Seahawks receivers and probably none of the Panthers receivers.
Yeah. Yourself? I mean, the thing about the Carolina receivers is their matchup this week. First of all, you have Reek Wolin, who's probably going to be all over Adam Thielen, I would imagine, unless they put him on DJ Chark just because of the size concerns, But Trey Brown has been really nice as kind of a complimentary piece. I think he put up some ridiculous IDP total last week of like 42 points with a pick and a forced fumble and 9 tackles, something ridiculous. So, and they've liked him since the beginning of the offseason. So they might be doing in Seattle what they always do and just finding these corners and turning them into absolute superstars. So, like you said, I'm not really comfortable with anybody on the Carolina Panthers in the wide receiver core. If I can sit them, I will. I'm not chasing the points on Adam Thielen. Although it was nice to see that, we may have a number 1 guy for Bryce Young. I still think that guy is probably Hayden Hurst, and we'll get to him in a minute. But, I wouldn't mind throwing out Hayden Hurst this week. But on the Seahawks side, Lockett, Metcalf, you got to start. With JSN, it's not really an issue because he's talented enough to get by. But Jeremy Chin has moved down into the slot for Carolina, and he's playing the nickel there. So, he's going to be a bit physical. He's going to try and take away the underneath stuff. I don't think he can hang with JSN, but it might limit Geno's looks there. So just Lockett, Metcalf for me. If I have to start Smith and Jigma, I will, but I'm not happy about it.
Tight ends, I want no part of for Seattle. Hayden Hurst, if you're really, I know he's been great so far. I'm not, good in week 1, bad in week 2.
Yeah.
If you have to and you're really up against it, he is streamable. The kickers here, Pinheiro, don't really want any part of. Jason Myers, not a bad stream. It's a higher one. I wouldn't go out of my way to add him, but if you got him, play him. The DSTs, Seattle, I don't mind it. I don't think Carolina can score all that much, and with a rookie QB, there should be some turnovers. So I think I've got Seattle top 12. Carolina, I believe I have as a sit. I like Carolina's defense. I don't like facing Seattle's offense. If you have to start Carolina and don't want to drop them, I think they're a good defense. You can probably play them. I would prefer to sit them, but, I definitely prefer the Seahawks in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you there. The only thing, again, is I'm going to take a look at week 4, and Carolina's playing Minnesota. Not going to happen. So Carolina completely off my radar as a DST.
Yes, they are.
And like you said, Hayden Hurst had a bad week last week in week 2, but the thing to consider is they were playing the New Orleans defense, who routinely shuts down tight ends. Seattle also no slouch when it comes to covering tight ends as well. So Hurst is kind of a desperation play for me.
All right, moving on. We have the Cowboys favored by 12 at the Cardinals, and I'm surprised it's only 12.
Yeah.
Dak is a must start this week, probably a top 5 option for me. I had to look because I couldn't remember who the quarterback was. Josh Dobbs, I don't even think is a start even in Superflex.
No.
This is the 3rd worst matchup. They're going to get crushed. I want no part of Dobbs in any format. There's probably someone on the waiver wire, even in Scott Fishbowl, that you could stream that's a better matchup than Dobbs this week. But like I said, this is all about Dak for me. He's an easy start. Might be my start of the week. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a top 3 matchup for him too. Oh, see, that's tough because Minnesota gets the Chargers defense, so Kirk Cousins will probably be my start of the week, but Dak would be my second start of the week. So I'm really in on one and I'm way out on the other.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. Dobbs had a good week last week, but I'm not chasing those points, especially against a Dallas D that has been crushing opponents. I mean, maybe you might say, they were only the Giants and the Jets, but at the same time, I really don't want any part of Dobbs. I never did, but it was nice to see him kind of put up some totals when nobody started him. Now you may be forced into thinking you can start him. You can't. Don't do it. As for Dak, again, like I said, they played the Giants and the Jets. The Giants were a terrible matchup, but he didn't even have to play in that game because the defense dominated. The Jets, not a good matchup, but Dak did okay. He just threw the ball 100 billion times to CD Lamb and got that production. So, there's nobody here on the Cardinals defense that scares me. So fire Dak up.
Running back. It's a mid-range matchup for James Conner. I'm going to start him anyways because if you have him, he's probably at running back 2 or flex. He's the only one who's going to see volume in this offense. So, someone's got to have the ball on Arizona, so I'd play him. Pollard scares me. This is a bad matchup, the worst matchup for fantasy running backs because they can't stop the pass, so you don't need to run the ball. And by the time they are finally running the ball to run the clock out, Pollard may be out of the game. So Pollard scares me, not because I don't think he's good, but because this could be one of those game scripts where they just don't need him. I'm still firing him up because he's Pollard. You have to. But I think Pollard I would start as – I'm going to put him as a high-end RB2 this week, not an RB1. And Connor, I'm good flexing as an RB3 or a flex, but what do you think about these two?
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. Like Pollard, I feel like is he's buffeted. He has that nice floor because of the receiving production that he's going to give you. So
I just don't know if he has the upside this week, like RB1 upside.
Sure, I hear you, but we know Dallas is going to move the ball, right? And they're not giving it to Dowdle much down around the goal line. So it's mostly Pollard there. I'm okay with it. I'm not, like you said, I'm not in love with it, but yeah, I'm playing Pollard everywhere I have him for sure. Our expectations slightly capped, maybe. But the reason
doesn't this game seem like the reason they invented the words workload management? Like they want to manage his workload. This seems that you're going to be 40-point favorites. This is the time to sit Pollard.
Dowdle 3-point or 3-touchdown game incoming, right?
Yes.
But yeah, James Conner for me, that does scare me. I mean, we know Dallas has a great pass rush, but they're just an excellent defense all around. We know they're going to kind of be stacking the box here because Dobbs is either going to hand off to Conner or run it. He's been serviceable as QB getting it to Marquise Brown last week, but no. Just if you can sit your Cardinals, sit them all.
I'm looking at the matchups. The Cardinals are an odd team. They're a terrible matchup for running backs. They're a terrible matchup for wide receivers. They're the best matchup for tight ends and the best matchup for quarterback. What the hell is going on? Are they just getting beat by tight ends for 50 points a game? Is this a Jake Ferguson week? Is that what you're telling me?
Good Lord. I have no idea. But I will say that the Cardinals played Washington in week 1. So Sam Howell doesn't necessarily know what the hell he's doing yet. And then in week 2, let's see if I can find them here.
And they
played the Giants, who
blew it.
Giants have been awful. Giants have been awful on defense this year. I actually have no faith that they're even going to turn it around. So I don't think we know who the Cardinals defense is yet. And we can kind of throw a lot of those stats out the window. But I will say some of their young players, especially is it Simmons? No, Simmons is on the Giants. Who's the other? Zaven Collins.
Oh, yeah, Simmons is on the Giants now. You're right. Yeah, Zaven Collins. Yeah.
Collins has really been stepping up this year. So
he is in my start column today for the league winners. My very first IDP sit start, and he was one. I think he might be my start of the week. So good choice.
Yeah.
Wide receiver. There's only one I want to play on Dallas. It's CeeDee Lamb. I have no real interest in anybody else. And on the Cardinals, I will play Hollywood Brown if I have to.
Yep.
I know I got him on waivers. I said this during the waiver show. I got him on waivers in like 4 leagues this week. I don't know why. He had a decent week too, but everyone was dropping him. He had like 13 points and everyone dropped him. I'll play him as a wide receiver 3. I'll play him as a flex. CeeDee Lamb's a wide receiver 1 for me. Those are the only 2 wide receivers I want in this game.
Michael Wilson has quietly had 2 really nice games to start his career, and with Josh Dobbs, right? The guy looks to be, and everything we've heard in the preseason, he looks like he's a baller. He's getting more work than Rondale Moore, who's been there for years. Zach Pascal, who's a journeyman, but is somebody who has been reliable in the past. So I am not happy about it, but if I have to flex Michael Wilson and expect wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 production, if I need those 8.6 points he got me last week, I'll take it. And Jalen Tolbert is interesting, at least if Cook sits out another week. I'm not sure what his status is, but we know Michael Gallup can have those blow up games. I don't want any part of that. He is like budget Mike Williams at this point, with just could go off for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, but normally giving you that 1 fantasy point. But Jalen Tolbert at least is seeing more targets, and if Cooks is out.
To finish off this matchup, we've got Jake Ferguson. The Cardinals can't stop tight ends. Dak loves throwing to his tight end. I think he's a top 6 tight end this week. Ferguson is. Zach Ertz has been good. I don't mind if you have to. I don't know. If you need a tight end, I don't mind playing him. He's not a great option. Ferguson is. Kickers, I'm looking. I don't think either of them really sway me. It's an indoor stadium. If you got to play Prater or if you've got to play Aubrey, you can play either. Where the hell is Aubrey even? Oh, Aubrey, I guess this ranks as the worst matchup, and I'm not sure why.
They must just keep scoring touchdowns.
They score so much, it's only extra points. It says they give up my chart has them as averaging 2 points per game against to kickers. So it must just be extra points, and that's it. Extra points. I don't know how that even works.
What did we say? It was Washington in week 1, meh. And then week 2 for Arizona was
Giants.
Yeah. So who just struggled and just, scored a bunch of touchdowns at the end because they had to. So.
And then at DST, I am more than confident playing the Cowboys. They
Probably
would be a
number
top
one.
3 for me. And the
Yeah.
Cardinals, you could not pay me to play. They are the worst one of all the DSTs. And this is one of the 5 teams I mentioned before that I want nothing to do with for my DST. Any major complaints or grievances with those 3?
Nothing there, but Zach Ertz has looked healthy, and he's getting a steady stream of targets from Dobbs. I'll fire him up if I have to. In terms of Ferguson, I don't want to play him, but he, like you said, he is playable. It's just they have a lot of tight ends that they rotate in there in Dallas.
Bet you never thought you'd say those words. Zach Ertz has looked healthy and is getting a steady stream of targets from Josh Dobbs. Yep, bet you had that on your bingo card come week
That's
1.
it.
Hey, so our final one here is the first of the 2 Monday nighters. We have the Eagles getting 4.5. Sorry, giving 4.5. I don't know if I could learn to read at Tampa. I think this is another bad spread. The Eagles are better than they've looked. They look a little rusty. I don't think the Bucks are as good as they've looked. They played what I feel like 2 division right. Oh no, what was it? Atlanta, Chicago. One was Chicago. I don't know who the other one was, but I don't think it was a good one.
It was Minnesota. So no, 2 terrible defenses.
Yeah, so there you go. So I think the Bucks are frauds. I think the Eagles are going to absolutely kill them. Jalen Hurts, it's the best matchup for a quarterback. So Jalen Hurts is a must start if he wasn't already. As far as Baker goes, it's a middle of the pack one. I don't think he's a great start. He's been a serviceable QB2 for you in Superflex if you've needed him. I think that comes crashing back down and we see some turnovers here. So Jalen Hurts, probably the QB1 this week. Baker Mayfield, and avoid if you can. What do you think?
Yep. Nothing else to add there. Jalen Hurts is after a tough week 1 against the New England Patriots in New England. He just absolutely smashed in Minnesota. He's likely going to do it again for the next few weeks here with Tampa, the Commanders, and the Rams on the docket. So, of course, you're not worried about him. You're starting him every week, but you can expect high-end numbers again, like he put up last week. Baker, I'm not a Baker believer. I'm a big fantasy hater. I actually like the guy, but he just hasn't been able to put it together. It's looked like he's been able to put it together in these first 2 weeks. But like we just said, terrible defenses that he played against, and he's got great weapons. In this one, everyone I think is going to be completely depressed, and I don't want any part of the Buccaneers offense here.
I don't think I want any part of these running backs. Rachaad White has looked good and bad. I don't want to face either of these run defenses. Rachaad White hasn't looked great, and then he's looked all right. I don't want him against the Eagles defense. Swift was great. Gainwell looked great the one game. Scott was in there. Penny, who the hell knows if he's out? The problem is I don't want to face the Bucs run defense. It's not what it was. It's still good. And I don't want to play who's the hot hand this week. Like if you told me Monday at the end of Monday night that Swift had a 90% share, I would believe you. If you told me Swift was a healthy inactive, I would also believe you. I don't know what the hell's going to go on with this backfield. Nothing would surprise me. If you told me the best one out of the Eagles running backs at the end of the game was Boston Scott, I would believe you. I think if I had to choose here out of the 5, I guess, if you want to include Sean Tucker on the one side, I would go Swift as the highest upside play in this game. But White would probably be the safest for me. I don't really want to play any of them as more than an RB3 or a flex. I think I would rank Swift first over White, like I said, for upside. Then I would probably go Gainwell. I'm trying to blank. Sean Tucker, and then Boston Scott, and assume Penny's healthy and active again.
Yeah, as a Rashad Penny truther, it hurts my heart, but he's likely done. We're going to have to see him get in the game and get meaningful touches soon. It's unlikely to happen. Kenny Gainwell did look good, but DeAndre Swift looked amazing last week. And I don't trust this coaching staff to just go ahead and say Swift is our number 1 at this point. They're definitely going to mix in their guys. They're certainly going to be concerned about the health of these guys going forward, because this is a team with Super Bowl aspirations. But I think DeAndre Swift deserves another chance to carry the load here. But the one thing that I like about, and I'm not a DeAndre Swift fan, right? I never have been, but the one thing that I do love is the fact that he's playing next to Jalen Hurts, right? Hurts is going to open up huge running lanes with the threat of him keeping and running the ball with those RPOs. He's also a capable and good passer. So he can, just pull it back on the play action, but also swing it out to Swift. We know Swift, if there's one thing he does really well, is he plays as a receiver. So that's the reason he dominated looks and, put up elite fantasy points last week. He's capable of doing that again. I'm not so scared about the Bucs defense just because of what the Eagles offense offers in terms of that RB1 position, and Swift has the best chance to claim it once again.
The only problem for me, and I'm going to have to paraphrase this stat because I don't have it in front of me and I heard it while driving. It might have been Fantasy Football Today. But in the 3 games, I don't remember if it was 20 or 22 carries, but in his career, in the 3 games where Swift has had, we'll say over 22 carries, the next week he has left all 3 games with injury. It's just the way he is. He has a workload, and within a game and a half, he is out. So I expect DeAndre Swift to not finish this game, is what I'm saying. So
always the threat.
Yeah, it always happens. So wide receivers here, it is a juicy matchup for the Eagles. I love Devontae Smith. I'm taking him all the time. Anywhere I could turn A.J. Brown into Devonta Smith, I did it all offseason, and I love that I have Smith now and no A.J. Brown. It's an okay matchup for the Bucs. I will start Evans as a probably high end 2, Godwin as a low end 2, Palmer in desperation if you need it, but I feel comfortable starting at least 4 of these guys. I think I go Smith, AJB, Evans, Godwin. Same for you?
Probably. I'm not as down on Brown as you seem to be, but I am as high on Smith.
I just think Smith is awesome. I think he's the top 5 or 6 receiver.
He's phenomenal, and I think the only time you're talking about, his size and he's skinny, right? That was the whole knock on him coming into the league in terms of being an alpha. You're just kind of throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks because you want to find some way to knock this guy. He won the damn Heisman Trophy, right? He showed us who he was, and he just has continued to dominate since he's in the league. So yeah, you're firing up Smith. A.J. Brown, I'm comfortable starting him as well, and no one else on the Eagles side. On the Bucs side, I think Mike Evans has kind of earned his place in your lineup. Chris Godwin really is the scary one because Baker Mayfield is going to get shut down, but the Eagles have been hemorrhaging points and hemorrhaging passing yards. They let Mac Jones throw for over 300 yards on them, and last week wasn't much better against not Daniel Jones. Who they playing week 2? Looking at
the Pats got the Dolphins, didn't they?
No, not the Pats. The Eagles.
Oh, the Eagles got me trying to blank. I don't remember.
I got it. Oh, Minnesota, right? So yeah, Minnesota was kind of throwing the ball all over the yard on them. Even the Patriots looked really good in the passing game. So I'm certainly not scared of the Buccaneers in this one. In terms of the pass catchers, I'll start Evans and Godwin. But like you said, it's probably DVS, A.J. Brown, 1A, 1B for me, and then Evans, Godwin.
All right. Dallas Goedert, easiest matchup for tight end. I know he's been off to a slow start. Fire him up. He will be a good tight end 1 this week. Cade Otton, it's a decent matchup for him. He has had 95% snap share. It hasn't led to production. Keep going with Otton. It's going to get there. He was all right last week. Better days will come. I've tried to add him in a few leagues where I have bench space as a good stash. He's a good one. I would start them both. Otton probably as a low-end tight end 1. The kickers, I don't want McLaughlin here. I don't like the matchup. I don't particularly like either of them, actually. Tampa isn't great for weather. I don't know if the game script is going to be great for this one. Could be one-sided. I prefer to get away from both kickers. You probably have to start Elliott. If you have him, though, you can't drop him.
Right.
The DSTs, I am all over the Eagles. They're one of my must-starts every week. and I am avoiding the Bucks because the Eagles are one of my must-avoid teams for DSTs. So, anything there of major disagreement or contention?
No.
Way to add to it, buddy. Way to add to it. We're going to end on a high note, okay?
Listen, I will say this: start your Eagles, sit your Buccaneers, except for Mike Evans and maybe Chris Godwin's. You're going to be, that matchup. I think is going to be a blowout. And like you're saying, I think we'll see the Eagles DST round into form. I'm not sure if their secondary is healed up, but I think Reed Blankenship is progressing and could be back. Maddox is a different story, but yeah, they're going to be okay. Eagles dominate.
I think Blankenship is going to be back. If I remember correctly, he was also in one of my IDP starts for this week, so I think he's going to be back. But all right, well, that concludes our NFL Week 3 NFC Home Games preview, including the Thursday nighter and one of the 2 Monday nighters. Thank you all for tuning in. For Aaron and Jesse, this has been Rat Pack Fantasy Football Week 3 game preview. Good luck in Week 3, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow with the AFC preview, which includes the Sunday nighter and the other Monday night game. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Later.